Good afternoon, everyone. This is Pam Wycliffe. I can't see me for some reason. I don't see me. But we are here today with Lunch with the League for January. And we have a really interesting topic and an interesting speaker today. Before we start, however, I want to say a few things about Lunch with the League and about the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters never supports or opposes a political party or a candidate. What we do is we present unbiased information about elections, the voting process, and issues. And we're nonpartisan, but after we study issues, we use our positions to advocate for or against particular policies that are in the public interest. Because of that, today, comments and opinions of folks who may want to speak today are not necessarily those of the League. We will be here from now till 1 o'clock. And the general format, and this is up to you, Julie, the general format is for you to speak for a half hour and then have Q&A for a half hour. Is that okay with you?
Totally fine.
Okay. And what we do ask is for everybody to mute and put your questions or your comments in the chat, in the whatever. Yeah, the chat. And then it's up to you, Julie, whether you want to read them or if you want me to read them to you so you can answer the questions.
Great.
Which do you prefer?
I can look at them. I can look at them. If I have trouble, I'll tell you.
Okay, that sounds great. And if people need more information about the League here in South Bend, there is Elizabeth. You can go to the League of Women Voters, lwvsouthbend.org, and it will give you a link to our state league and also to the national league, but it tells you also what we are doing locally. And with all that, I will introduce our speaker. On very short notice, Julie Wendorf had agreed to become our speaker today, and we thank you very much, Julie, for doing that. Julie is the director of Crown Point Community Library, and she has been that since 2018. And she is an Indiana Library Federation 2025 president. And that's the ILF, and we'll probably see those words, won't we, Julie, at some point during your talk today. Julie is active in community service organizations, including the Rotary International, Lions Club, and a member of the board of the Friends of Crown Point Adult Learning Center. She's also in Shared Ethics Advisory Commission. She has a passion for library collaboration projects with community organizations, doing library research and library advocacy. She's actively involved in ILF on the, another one of those words, IPLA, and you can tell us what that is, board, and the Public Service Division Committee, Advocacy Committee. She has received her bachelor's degree in secondary education and teaching and a BA degree in language and literature, general, from University of Cincinnati, and a master's degree of library science at Indiana University in Indianapolis. And one thing that she doesn't know that I know, because I did some research, was that Julie received the Influential Woman Award in Economic Development and Government category from the Northwest Indiana Influential Women Association this year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And she's going to talk today about Indiana Freedom, Protect Your Right to Read. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie, and she will take it from there. Thank you,
Well,
Julie.
great. Thank you so much. And first, before I start my presentation, just want to thank you for the work that you do. I do work with our local League of Women Voters here in Lake County. So we've always been very happy to partner with them at the library and here in Crown Point. So thank you so much for the work that you guys do throughout the state. So as you can see, I'm going to be presenting on protecting your right to read, an organization that ILF, Indiana Library Federation, created at just a little over a year ago in Freedom, which is main focus is to protect the right to read for those living in Indiana. So I already got a lovely introduction. So just I'm director at Crown Point, and I'm the current president of ILF. So ILF it has identified at a point we since 2020, and I've been involved with advocacy for a while. I'm the co-chair of our advocacy committee at ILF. When we have a lobbyist that works with our interests down at the State House. But we have a couple groups, special interest groups, including Moms for Liberty and also Purple for Parents, that have been small but very vocal groups that have been able to get the ear of some legislators and have brought anti-library legislation to the floor since 2020. And so at the end of the 2023 session, our lobbyist really suggested, because of the impact that Purple for Parents in particular had been having with legislators, that we really needed to consider creating a grassroots group to make sure that we could in essence, combat that and have the positives of libraries and the right to read out there. So this is where we birthed in Freedom. So the Library Federation leads and educates and advocates for the advancement of library services and all its residents. And the ILF actually represents three library types: academic libraries, public libraries, and school libraries. So it's a federation of all libraries in Indiana. So you'll see the mission of In Freedom there is to work to ensure all Hoosiers have the freedom to read and a right to equitable access to information. In Freedom is only laser focused on the information freedom and book banning. So ILF and the advocacy committee deals with the other things that affect librarians, whether it's finances, property tax, other bills that would come against it. When you look at our In Freedom page, our social media, the focus is only going to be on the freedom to read. It will not have other issues that impact libraries. We're what we've seen in national polls is that well over 80% of the people in the United States do not support book banning. And yet a very small minority vocal group of people are able to be the loudest voices in the room and get some legislation passed. And of course, you've seen this happen in other states as well. And Indiana tends to follow the model of Texas and Florida in this area. So when we see legislation introduced there and passed, usually our legislators start bringing those same kind of things the following legislative session. So we've seen that pattern happen over and over and over again. But In Freedom was to try to give voice to the majority, the quiet majority, the silent majority that we know exists nationwide, and we believe also exists in the state of Indiana, of those that want to organize and support parents and community members to stand up to censorship. So we have some background information about challenged books, and this information comes out in April every year. So in April, we'll see what the most challenged books are 2024. And the American Library Association is who puts this list together. And as the ILF president and then also advocacy, I've had some unique opportunities to have some training with the American Library Association recently about book challenges. So it's been very interesting to learn more about this. These are the top challenged books in 2023. Most of these books, Genderqueer, All Boys Aren't Blue, This Book is Gay, Perks of Being a Wallflower, Flamer, The Bluest Eye, Tricks, Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, and Let's Talk About It, and Sold. Many of the books that are, and in fact, all of these books are either dealing with LGBTQ content, or explicit sex representation, but key in that they are usually coming in like the bluest eye and sold from award-winning books that are dealing with very difficult, sometimes EDI content. And so the challenges again really focus on the majority LGBTQ material, but then also hit some historical issues where we've seen that even nationwide, where we have the refusal to actually have young adults be able to see some of our true history that has happened. Although it's very difficult to read, you can't talk about some of these situations without including the horrific things that happen, such as rape and incest. We've seen a rise in titles that are challenged in public schools and libraries. You can see on my next slide here that in 2014, we had 235 total attempts to censor, and there was a number of 235 total titles challenged and 183 unique titles challenged. And then we had Indiana numbers, although we have discovered that Indiana libraries tend not to report to American Library Association all their challenges. So we know that we underreport here in the state of Indiana. So if you look at the other side of the slide, you'll see that I love how they used red as the color because it just looks more angry in 2023. And that's, of course, what has happened in the last 10 years is that our numbers have really jumped astronomically nationwide and in Indiana. There's been 938 total attempts to censor with a total of 9,000 titles with over 4,000 unique titles challenged. And Indiana numbers at 16 attempts to restrict access and 23 titles challenged. In those attempts we know is woefully underreported. If you followed some of the news that happened in Indianapolis area at Hamilton East Public Library, where they had their school board, who was Michael Beckwith was a member of their library board at the time, uh, created a list of criteria that they did not want to have their young adult books have in their teen area. And the librarians were forced to read each book and then move those books from the young adult section into the adult collection if it had any of this material. And that was going pretty fast. They were moving a lot of materials out, and they made the strategic error of moving John Green's book, who happened to live in the area, out of the award-winning teen book into the adult collection. And when he found out, he went viral in his opposing that policy at the library. And as a result, they halted that policy, and Michael Beckwith left the board to pursue other things. But definitely that outcry, not only at the state level, but actually the national and worldwide level that he brought to that in his following, in his social media and such, brought a lot of attention, unwanted attention to Hamilton East Public Library. And we know that the amount of challenges that they had there dwarf what we have reported for Indiana. So you'll see that there are 400 total attempts to censor and 1,128 unique titles challenged in public libraries and schools through so far in 2024. But what's really interesting, and what we know that the legislators really attempted in Indiana, is to instill fear in librarians. When they were successful 2 years ago in passing legislation that actually criminalizes school librarians uh, if they are accused of sharing harmful materials. And harmful materials is is different than what they define pornography and the Miller test. But what they are saying is if they have materials that they consider harmful, and these special groups would consider any material that has LGBTQ material, even sex ed materials, lots, it's a very wide range of materials as harmful for children. They could actually charge a school librarian with a level 6 felony, which is and just incredible. And public libraries were also included in this legislation, but we were able to negotiate public libraries out of that bill, and only school librarians were impacted. So it was a partial win for us, but we were very sad to have our school librarians be at the risk of being charged criminally, knowing that that's a career-ending situation for most librarians, especially ones working in a public school. And so we have been very concerned about that. So as a result, we know what has happened in the state of Indiana is that some librarians, and there's very few certified librarians in the state of Indiana. The law only requires one certified librarian for each school district, and not every not every school district actually has that even. But what you have is a media specialists that are untrained, so they may not trained professionally as librarians, and so they are very easy to scare to keep their job, and so they cease to purchase books that they might feel like could get challenged. So that's what soft censorship is when it's self-centered, censored, and so they just cease to purchase the books because they don't want to deal with the possible challenges that could arise. That happens in both public libraries and school libraries. The other problem that we know that's been happening is that school district leadership have been identifying what the using those most commonly banned books or challenged books, and actually being proactive and going into the libraries and taking those items out of their collections without the librarian's knowledge at all, making those executive decisions. So those books are not available at the school libraries at all anymore without even going through a challenge process. So books aren't the only target. That's what we hear most about, and when we think about challenges, but we also have displays also challenged. So if there's a display in the library, whether it's a book display or a display in a display case or something, those have been challenged, especially when it's surrounding a special month celebration for American Library Association. So you might have a month celebrating Black History or LGBTQ Pride Month. Those kind of displays, if they're displayed, could get challenges. Um, we've had some challenges for library closures and funding and bomb threats. So oftentimes we've had some threats where people call in bomb threats, and in essence are able to close a library because of that for a day or even longer. We've had hate crimes, and this has happened actually at my very own library here, where when we did a moving project recently, it was amazing that when we moved bookshelves, the only books that we found hidden behind shelves and in underneath shelves were all books that were materials that would likely have been challenged. So those LGBTQ materials are hidden. We had a one patron come to our reference desk last year who asked for some religious materials, and so we directed them to the area where they are. And of course, if you know anything about libraries, not only Christian materials would be in that Dewey Decimal area, and they found our shelf and a half of Islamic materials and actually cleared those shelves and hid those books throughout the library, and we had to go looking for them. And we've, of course, also caught people throwing books away in our garbages too. And they're always books that are challenge books. Sometimes we have challenges for programs. So if a library has a program that might be hitting a target audience for LGBT teens or other programs that would be fit under some of the areas that they have concerns in, they will do that. Same with films that they show. And then there's the other. some states have taken the really phenomenal approach of protecting the freedom to read, and they have passed laws to protect libraries and guard against book banning. In essence, outlaw book banning in their states. So you see those listed here. Illinois is one of them, very close. We have no um, uh, dreams of this kind of legislation ever passing in Indiana. Sadly, it's not possible. In Freedom has a social media a presence. We're on Facebook, we're on X, and we're also on Twitter and TikTok. And then we also are on well, I'm sorry, Facebook as well. Yeah. So what can you do if you scan this QR code that's on the right over there? You can sign up on our website for In Freedom. We have our own website. It brings you right to, if you use your camera and scan that, it will bring you right to our website. When you get there, it will ask you to sign up with your email and zip code to become a member. There's no cost for this whatsoever. And why we designed the website to capture that information is that when we have a issue that challenges the freedom to read at the State House, and we need to activate our patrons and the public to that. We can send out an alert for people to be able to write their legislators there. So that's where we gather that information. We also ask you, like you did today, invite us to speak at your meetings so we can share the information at your events or with your membership. Um, and then we ask you to share the information with other people. So we're really kind of that, like that old shampoo commercial. I always say, and I date myself when I say it. It's wasn't it Wella, and so on and so on and so on. We need to build our voices to be able to stand up to these challenges in our state, and we need more people. We have found that unfortunately, when librarians go down, and I've testified a number of times on the Senate and House floor, is that legislators unfortunately discount us as being self-serving, interested. And so they always want to hear from the regular people of Indiana. And so this was our attempt to make sure that we can have not just librarian workers and not just librarians, but actual residents of Indiana to be able to land letters or emails on their desks so they hear from us, because we know that our Purple for Parents and our Moms for Liberty not only will show up to testify every time, but they also have activated their volunteers to send letters to their representatives, and that is what has hurt us in the past. And that's why we formed In Freedom, to kind of combat that, because they'll say, well, we have 5 letters from people just really upset about this issue, and then they decide to move forward with trying to fix that issue. We want to show the other side. Other ways you can get involved, you can be a social media amplifier, and when you like and share and interact with our social media on whatever platform we have, that allows other people that you have on your social media to see that cause and help grow that group. So you invite your friends to join on there, and you can share that information as an educational piece on your social media. Um, our advocacy team, oops, sorry, back too fast. Our advocacy team would help contact your own local representatives and senators. We have people that write letters to the editor, do postcard campaigns, write testimonials, etc. We have people that are really working on helping us to grow our group. So reaching out to these types of opportunities to grow our group. And then, of course, our events team that we have, and that helps out with creating events and attending events, like sometimes in person and sometimes online, like this one. So that's something that we are looking for people that are involved to get involved in if they really feel like they have their hearts called to this mission in Indiana. We have a great event happening. We are really lucky to have John Green be willing to come and be our guest at our first fundraiser for In Freedom, which is going to be take place on Monday, June 30th. He'll be in conversation on and talking about censorship in the trenches and talking about his experience, not only in Indiana where he lives, but also throughout the nation where his book has been challenged quite a bit and other places inside United States. So really, and he's been part of some major lawsuits filed in other states that challenge this, because really many of these laws that are being passed, including the one in Indiana, have been deemed unconstitutional at different and in different states. So we just had a very great decision in Arkansas at a court saying that criminalizing librarianship is unconstitutional. So we're hoping that that goes up to a higher court and that we can have that impact of those decisions help kind of turn the tide here in Indiana. But the tickets are available for this right now, and you can become a sponsor at our John Green event. You can scan that QR code again, and that's where you can look at the sponsorship, or you can buy a ticket. And actually, you can even if you can't attend the event, we have a special sponsorship as a personal sponsor that you could just sponsor the event, knowing that that money is going to this effort fighting censorship in the state of Indiana. And that's all I had in terms of a formal presentation. So I'm going to look at the chat and see if there's any questions for me. The first one I see is, does the Indiana Library Federation have a lobbyist at the State House? Yes, we do. So as the advocacy co-chair, although I had to step aside from that right now for this year because I'm president, we have contracted with Taft, and we have a great a team of lobbyists, actually a firm that does our work there, and they've been fantastic with helping us fight the legislation we've had recently. Our team is kind of unique, maybe not so unique in lobbying, but we have two people that are our lead lobbyists. One is very connected in the Republican Party. In fact, is part of the inaugural for incoming Governor Braun, and the other one is very involved in the Democratic side. So we have those access to both sides of the aisle, which is really great. So yes, we do have lobbyists. Where will the event be held? Was that not on that sheet? It's going to be at Pike Performing Arts in Indianapolis. So at that high school's venue, because of our school librarians that are involved with ILF there, we're able to get that just at the cost of the custodians that have to clean it. So we can maximize our fundraising capability for that event. Does the ILF work with other groups to promote civil liberties like ACLU? Yes, we do. Sometimes we work in conjunction with them in an open way. Sometimes we work in a more collaborative way, quietly. So we do meet with them, and they often. I had an interesting discussion actually this week as we think about the law that was challenged in Arkansas and what that impact has for us in Indiana. In that, would ILF bring a suit to say something's unconstitutional, or would we partner with ACLU to do that because they would also be interested in that as well. So one moment, I'm getting a call repeatedly in here, and I think it might be an emergency. Hold on just a second.
Oh dear.
I'm presenting. Is there an emergency? I need to call the boardroom. Okay, I couldn't see who was calling, but I just got 3 calls in a row. So Once you find out, just let me know if there's an emergency. Okay, okay, bye, bye. Sorry, working in a public library means that anything can happen at any time, so I don't ignore those kind of calls. Let's see. Tell us about more about John Green. John Green is award-winning author. He has written a lot of books, bestsellers for young adults. He lives in the Hamilton County, Fishers, Carmel area. I'm not exactly sure where he lives, but he is very popular and has a reach on social media, not only for his books, but also his social issues. He just had a book come out on what is it? What is he? I can't remember what he's fighting on now, but just a lot of social issues. So he's well known throughout the world, actually. Um, you might know him from his award-winning book and movie, no, The Fault in Our Stars. So, um, let's see. Cynthia, I have joined in Freedom to Read. Thank you, Cynthia. Our very local group, Freedom Readers of St. Joe, are looking for ways. And actually, I know of this group, your Freedom Readers, because I think you've been a great support to the public library, St. Joe Public Library, where I know the director there as well, Stephanie Murphy. And you're always looking to connect to have a clearinghouse with state and national groups and join the national grant prize for teaching. Yes, so I mean, having your group and you guys doing the local push out to other people that are also of like-minded to us to have them join in Freedom helps us to connect that to the direct uh, um, call out for shout outs to legislators. So we're keeping a very close eye on all those bills. And so if they're in Freedom Readers or members, then we can push out the action alerts to them. So that's great that they would join that, and you guys would continue to push that out for us as well at the local level.
Mm.
Ronaldo, yes, advocacy, sympathetic to the Palestine perspective. Yes, that we're talking about demonstration abilities and the freedom to protest, freedom of information, freedom of opinion. Yes, it is true for libraries as well. It's a challenge that we're getting across the board in many ways. So yes. It's an interesting question, Elizabeth. Do courts treat children and adults very differently when it comes to the First Amendment rights? Do parents' rights trump children's rights in most or all cases? It's somewhat of a legal question that I don't feel totally able to knowledgeably answer myself. Um, at the public library level, and this is really the nuance of a difference between a public library and a school library. Some of these issues are coming as a result of changes to public school access. So because of first in terms of attacks on schools for safety, many schools have really locked down their buildings, right? It used to be that you could gain entry to a school fairly easily by entering the front door. Your parents, you wanted to like drop in, you used to volunteer, all the things that you used to do, and schools used to be much easier to gain access. And as a result of those attacks and putting in safety things into schools, um, they've really become locked down. And so there and many schools have kind of decided that they'd rather not have as many parents in the building for safety reasons in terms of having that traffic and foot traffic in the building. It's also paired with the fact that they've tried, there's so many things that they have to teach and the things they have to accomplish. They try to kind of take away the distractions in the day as well. Because of that lack of access, some parents, especially as a result of COVID too, with some of that also heightened even more, and that some parents have felt like they have no access to their children during the day. And some of this has been the pushback to that. So So there is some challenges in that idea, in that at the time when children are at school, schools actually act in loco parentis for children in ways that a public library does not. Now, at the public library, we always say that everybody has, we would agree with parents' rights trumping, but only for your family, right? We would say we have all those materials in the public library. We're trying to make sure we have materials that are diverse, that attract and meet the needs of our whole community. However, um, and a parent has the right to choose what materials are best suited to them, but they can't make that choice for the other people in their communities. So this is where I have a challenge. If I have a challenge here at the library, and I do get occasional challenges where I would try to explain to that patron, I understand that you might not want to read a picture book that has two moms or two dads. However, I know that our community contains families that look like that, and the children of those families deserve to be able to see representation in the books that they check out at the library. Now, there was a particular book I had that was challenged most recently at the library, which was a book about becoming a big brother and a big sister. And so the child in question was actually a trans child. And it's a very controversial idea on whether or not a child that's underage can actually decide if they're trans or not and how that's supported in a family. That's a family's choice, and one that's been up for debate, of course, in the state of Indiana in recent years. So I had somebody upset that we had this becoming a big brother, a big sister, a big sibling, really, in essence, for um, a book for an individual in the book was, I don't know, 5 or so, well, maybe a little bit older, and was concerned about the new baby coming to their family. Would they also have the same challenges that they felt they had gone through and trying to decide what gender they were? And so I had somebody challenge this book. And the thing is that in my library, I probably, let's say, I don't know off the top of my head, but let's say I have 100 books that talk about becoming a big brother or big sister on the shelf. I had one book that talked about the trans experience. And so right there, it just shows that I'm meeting the needs for everybody in the community. And my advice to that parent would be that it's their responsibility to look at the books that they're checking out and guide their children to select the materials that they feel fits their values. And so that's what we repeatedly would say to people that are upset about that. The problem is that most of these groups don't want to only protect their children, they want to make the decision for the whole community. And that's where the problem comes in. And they also don't want to be responsible for actually monitoring the materials themselves. They don't like it when I get this all the time, is they don't like it when they're surprised by content in a book when they sit down to read it with their child. Um, but we always, as librarians always say, is that it's a parent's job to review materials before they sit down. The first time they look at that book should be that when they're pulling up a child on their lap to read the book, they should make sure that it's a book that they want and matches their values. So in that way, parents' rights do trump in that they at the public library, we say you get the choice. We just provide the materials, you get to pick. But it does not give them the right to pick for the rest of the community. Oh, thanks for sharing your Freedom readers. I'm gonna copy that. Oh, great. I'm not sure about Blue Sky. We'll have to investigate that. I will ask the group that does that at in Freedom. I know at the library level, and and even for a volunteer organization like ILF, it's just a matter of how many platforms can we support and do. We've been discussing that we probably are going to leave X eventually, so it might make room for us to be on another platform. Yes, Elizabeth, agree with you that parents should pass their values on to their children, but they shouldn't try to be involved in the raising of other people's children. But that's what we've found at the State House, and I've had the conversation with a lot of our legislators, is they feel like when we say that people have the right to pick for their children, their immediate retort is, but what about those parents that aren't doing a good job? And what they mean is, what about parents that don't agree and do the same things that I do and don't follow the same values that how can we force them to be like us? And that's where we get the legislation where they're trying to save or protect those children as a whole. And sometimes it's, they've gone as far as to even talk about um, limiting access in the public library, like physical access to books in the library for children underage. So at my library, we're in walking distance of several libraries, schools, and so after school, of course, we become a place for kids to hang out. We have a policy at the library here that you have to be 8 years old. I mean, sorry, 9 years old to be here by yourself, or have a teenager past a certain age, I think it's 13, watching you. Now, parents, of course, take advantage of the library because it's free daycare, right? In their mind, it is. We make it very clear that we are a public building and we're not responsible to watch your children. We try to make it as safe a place as possible. However, we don't, watch the traffic of the library in that a child can walk into the adult collection and pick a book off the shelf and read it. We're not going to stop a child from doing that. And some of the legislators would actually would like us to, like, in essence, put a lock, or like you would have to scan your library card or something to get that you to be 18 or older to get into the adult section and stuff. Very impractical things, but that's their desires, that we'd be policing access to all materials for adolescents and or children when they're in the library. But my retort for that is that if you've decided to let your children loose in the library unattended, then the consequences of them looking at whatever they want is, of course, the result of that. But it's also, we've said often at the State House as well, is that children are not learning about pornography or seeing pornography or learning things from books that they aren't already accessing on their phones that they give them, right? And so way more accessible there than it ever is in the library, because of course, the libraries would maintain that we have no pornography in the library. There's nothing in the library that's harmful. It might challenge your thinking. It might not be something that your values and your family support, but there's no pornography in the library.
Julie,
Any
I
other
have a question.
questions?
I have a
Uh-huh.
question that I don't want, but I didn't know how to write it. Does your group get involved at all for school boards? If school boards have someone that they want to, some of those groups might want to put somebody on the school board that would be would advocate for banning books. Do you get involved in that at all?
Um, we
Does
don't
that make
really get
sense?
involved in, we don't really get involved in elections and such like that. Of course, you guys are very, very aware that there's been a push in Indiana to, in essence, politicize school board elections and have them be declared party elections. Um, but um, what I would say is that most libraries in the state of Indiana, public libraries, we have appointed boards, and so our boards, like my 7-member board that runs, it's responsible for my library, is appointed, and they are appointed by certain bodies, and it depends on the libraries. A majority of libraries follow the same model mine is, where I have 2 appointed by the county council, 2 appointed by the county commissioners, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 by my school district. So what happens, and what happened in Hamilton East, is those appointing bodies can appoint, depending on their politics and what they feel, they may appoint people to the library board, which happens like it did in Hamilton East, where there's a takeover of a board, and they're not even library friendly. They actually have an agenda that's anti-library, and we've seen that happen throughout the state. Right now we have an area in Middlebury that's really flaring up. That's where the home of Purple Parents is, and so they've been working with county commissioner that's like-minded to them, and so they've been really challenging Middlebury Public Library there. It can get very difficult for a lot, and we've seen library directors lose their jobs over this, because if they're standing for what we believe as librarians, professional librarians believe in, the freedom to read, all these things, um, and your board does not, then all of a sudden you've lost your job. And the directors serve at the pleasure of the boards, so we can lose our job at any given time. So it's a delicate dance when your board does not support you. I'm lucky to have a board that supports me fully here at Crown Point, but we've seen it not to be the case in some areas in Indiana.
But freedom to read doesn't get involved in any of that as
Um,
far
no,
as
not freedom to
advocating
read
or.
necessarily, not in freedom. ILF advocacy committee goes and supports them. So we support the library director in either public or non-public ways. Like in Middlebury, we've been in contact with them for a long time with their situation. So depending on what they feel is most helpful, sometimes we're just providing resources for them. And other times we'll do a public statement on it. But oftentimes, those local library directors have decided it doesn't really help their issue for the Indiana Library Federation or anybody to come in and conflate the issue at the local level. They try to deal with it usually themselves, but we usually are supporting them behind the
Scenes.
the scenes. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. We just had our legislative update. We have a number of bills that are not favorable to libraries. Let me see if I can find it. I was just doing that this morning with my directors group that I had to hop off of for you. Let's
Oh
see.
dear.
We're and there's as you know, there's so many bills, so we're still reading them. But ones that we're particularly worried about is House Bill 1195, authored by David Abbott. And that goes to the definition of pornography again. It's kind of doubling down on the law that we have already had passed in previous years. We have House Bill 1136, um, and that deals with school districts, and that impacts public libraries in that this was aimed mostly at indie public schools, but also hit some schools up here in Northwest Indiana. If there's less than 50% of the students in the county that are at the public schools, it would actually call for the disillusionment of the public school district as a whole. So it would cease to exist, and that would impact public libraries because they are they appoint members to our boards. So if they cease to exist, we're not sure what that impact is for the public libraries. That it impacts the any public schools, but also it would impact Gary Community Schools and Tri-Township Consolidated Schools in LaPorte, Union Schools in Muncie, and Camilton Schools in down south in Perry County, near the Kentucky border. So this is something we're also very concerned on. Um, Senate Bill 174 is authored by Shelley Yoder. That's one we're concerned about. It replaces the term child pornography with the term child sex abuse material throughout the Indiana Code. We don't think it's a lot to be worried about. Shelley Yoder is a library supporter. So I don't think that we have a problem, but we're keeping our eyes on it. We'll watch the bill tracking on it because we know that sometimes these can be changed as they go through the state house. We're very concerned about property tax reform especially public libraries as a taxing entity. We had a legislator that has brought over and over again anti-library legislation, Senator Toms. He last session had proposed a bill that would take away public libraries' ability to be a taxing entity, like we would become a department of county government or city or town government, which would allow them to, in essence, take our budgets and redesign those budgets. So it would really be a challenge to our ability to provide services. Um, but we don't know where that's going to land because we haven't seen the property tax final proposal. But there's a lot of talk, and I'm sure if you're following incoming Governor Braun's plans, he's doing a lot of consolidation and a lot of reorganization of government and looking at uh, um, uh, reducing local government. So there's some bills that we're concerned about in terms of the township level, abolishing townships, consolidation. This goes back to the Kernan Shepherd report of years ago, and libraries were one of those places where they wanted to consolidate. So some libraries are very concerned about that as well. Oh, yeah, the homestead property tax falls, all the property tax bills, and there's so many in terms of what their impact is, would impact the public library's ability to provide services. Public libraries, unlike other like a school, are not able to levy taxes. So we uh we only are funded by property taxes. Most libraries, some of those other libraries in the state not only get property tax, but they might get local income tax. And that's also something that's being talked about at the State House in terms of talking about who could get lit income tax, because counties are looking at like absorbing that to, into their budgets so that they don't have to worry about the property tax decreasing. So, excuse me, we're really in
Okay,
a
well,
spot where it feels like, because of the property for the tax caps and the property tax being probably reduced in either targeted ways or in large ways, is that you have a pie, right? And everybody gets it's a finite pie. It's not like love, right? Where we say the pie, there's a piece for everyone. There's not a piece in this fiscal pie. And so everybody's starting to eat each other and challenge each other and try to figure out how they can ensure that they have enough money to do what they're
sure.
doing. And so we're concerned about that because we don't feel that libraries have a lot of power to fight that off. So we'll see.
Okay, and Jill, Jill put something in here. Jill, was that your question? I saw your hand was raised.
Yes, I see that, Jill, on Indie Public. Yes, the bill that I mentioned was targeting Indie Public in particular. That's what their aim was. But there's unintended consequences to hit other school districts as well. Like I said, LaPorte and Gary Public Library, Gary Public schools. So there's other schools that are impacted besides just Indie Public. But yes.
We have 3 minutes. If anyone has one more question that they're dying to ask. I guess.
But we've had the same, the challenges that we've had in Indiana. As I get more involved in the American Library Association, they're the same challenges we see in other states. And what happens is they first challenge the materials, and when they're not successful in challenging materials, then they go into attacking your funding. This has happened here in Indiana. So they're looking at, if they can't control us because it's constitutional rights, right? About freedom to read and the things that you can have access to, then they're going to say, well, we're just going to now be more punitive about your ability to either levy your own taxes or be in control of your destiny, or to reduce your funding so that they can, in essence, get what they wanted.
Wow. Okay. And Elizabeth added, and local legislator Jake Teshka is the author and sponsor of the dissolution of the public schools bill. Julie, we thank you very much for
Thank you so much.
for all you had to share with us and and especially for giving us ways that we can get involved and a QR code so that we can find it easily.
Yeah,
And thank you so much for sharing and leaving your other meeting so you could
no
join
problem.
us.
No problem. And like I said, the most important thing for us is knowing that we know that you're individuals like you guys that are here today agree with us and the freedom to read, access to materials, all those things. What we need you to do is make sure that you're talking about it. We talk about, I present with my co-chair of advocacy a lot of times, everyday advocacy all the time. So we're always trying to make sure that when you're in the community and somebody says, oh, I don't know why libraries have to have books like that you could say, oh, but do you know that there are probably people in our community that need those books that, we should be okay with supporting that or, or even taxes, right? We nobody likes high taxes, but we also have to recognize that taxes are needed to provide essential services like public libraries and other things in our state. So I
Perfect.
appreciate you guys being ambassadors for us.
Thank you so much. Right at 1 o'clock. That is pretty amazing. And thank you everyone else who has come today and has shared and listened and is going to carry it forward perhaps. We'll look for you guys all on Facebook, on social media, and join and put it out there. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the snow, and be careful if you're driving.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Uh,